Here is a question that has been sitting in the back of every Game of Thrones fan's mind since the very first scene of the entire show. What does the Night King actually want? Not what he is doing. We can all see what he is doing. He is raising the dead. He is marching south. He brought down an entire wall of ice that stood for 8,000 years. But why? That is the question nobody has been able to answer with complete confidence. Not the characters inside the show. Not the authors. And honestly, not even the showrunners gave us a satisfying answer by the end. So today, we're going to dig deep. We're going to go beyond what the show told us and explore every credible theory about the Night King's true motivation. Some of these will surprise you. Some will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this story. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what he wants, we need to talk about what he is. Because understanding his origin is the key to understanding his purpose. Thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones, the Children of the Forest were in a war. A brutal, desperate war against the First Men, who had come to Westeros and were cutting down their sacred Weirwood trees, destroying everything the children had built for centuries. The children tried everything, and eventually, in an act of total desperation, they turned to something dark. They captured a man. They pressed a dragonglass blade into his chest, and they created the very first White Walker. A weapon, a living weapon of mass destruction, designed to protect them from the humans threatening their extinction. But here's where things get complicated. That weapon did not stay a weapon. Somewhere along the line, this being, who we now call the Night King, developed something the children never intended him to have, a will of his own. And that changes everything when we try to figure out what he wants. Because he was built to serve a purpose. But he may have broken free from that purpose entirely. So the question becomes, is the Night King still running on his original programming? Or has he evolved into something his creators never could have predicted? Let's start with what I personally believe is the most grounded and satisfying theory. An ancient agreement was broken. Think about it this way. The Long Night happened thousands of years ago. The White Walkers came. They nearly wiped out all of humanity. And then they stopped. They went back beyond the wall. The wall was built. And for thousands of years, nothing happened. Now ask yourself, why would they just stop? If the Night King's goal was to destroy all human life, why did he pull back? He was winning. The legends tell us the last hero journeyed north to find the Children of the Forest. And somehow, together, they ended the Long Night. But they did not destroy the Night King. We know this because he came back. So what ended the Long Night? Almost certainly a deal. A pact. An agreement between the Night King, the Children of the Forest, and possibly the First Men themselves. The wall may have been part of that deal. A boundary. A line that says, you stay north, we stay south, and the balance holds. But something broke that agreement, and the Night King mobilized. What broke it? That is the real question. Was it the centuries of neglect by the Night's Watch? Was it the stopping of Craster's sacrifices? Was it Bran accidentally marking himself inside the Weirwood net, giving the Night King a crack in a magical boundary? Or was it all of these things together? A slow erosion of a deal that was always fragile. Whatever it was, the Night King may not be an aggressor at all. He may be responding. He may be someone who held up his end of a deal for thousands of years and is now collecting a debt. This one flips the entire narrative on its head. What if the Night King is not reacting to events? What if he has been planning this for a very, very long time? There is strong evidence, both in the show and the books, that the Night King possesses some form of green sight, the ability to see visions through the Weirwood trees. We know Bran used the Weirwood network to see into the past. We know Bloodraven sat in that cave for decades, watching the world through roots and bark. The Night King is connected to that same network. He sensed Bran through it. He marked him. So what else has he seen? Melisandre believed in a prophecy. That Azor Ahai, a legendary hero, would be reborn. A prince or princess who was promised. Someone who would stand against the darkness and end it forever. Now imagine the Night King has seen this too. Imagine he watched through the Weirwood trees as the pieces of that prophecy began falling into place. He would not wait. He would move first. He would raise his army, build his numbers, position himself to capture a dragon. the one weapon capable of destroying his forces in a single pass. Everything the Night King does looks like preparation, and preparation implies he knows what is coming. The Night King may be fighting a preemptive war, not because he wants destruction for its own sake, but because he knows a hero is coming who could end him for good, and he is not going to let that happen. Okay, this one's going to sound extreme, but stay with me. What if the Night King is not the biggest threat in this story? What if there is something beyond the wall, something so ancient and so terrifying that even the Night King is trying to get away from it? Think about how this reframes everything. Every person in Westeros sees the White Walkers as the enemy. But what if, from the Night King's perspective, he is trying to survive too? What if he brought his army south not to invade, but to escape? The books describe the world beyond the wall as vast and ancient, full of things that have no names. The assumption that the Night King is the most dangerous thing in that frozen darkness may simply be a matter of perspective, of geography, of who is doing the looking. This theory does not have a lot of direct evidence in the show, but it would be one of the greatest twists in storytelling history. The monster is not the villain. The monster is a refugee, and by the time anyone figures that out, it is far too late. Here is a theory that I think deserves far more attention than it gets. The three-eyed raven told Bran something crucial. He told him that the Night King wants to destroy him specifically because Bran holds the memory of the world. The entire history of humanity lives inside Bran's mind, stored through his connection to the Weirwood trees. And if the Night King destroys Bran, he destroys all of that. Not just lives, memory. Think about what that means. It means the Night King's goal is not just death. It is permanent erasure. No records, no history, no stories passed down through generations. No memory of the world that came before. Just silence. This raises a terrifying question. Why does the Night King want to erase history? What is in that history that threatens him? What does he not want anyone to know? Maybe the true terms of the original pact. Maybe the real reason he was created. Maybe something about his own nature that, if humanity remembered it, would give them power over him. The Night King is not just an army marching south. He is a force of total forgetting, and that may be the most frightening thing about him. Let's talk about one of the most popular fan theories in the entire community. The Night King is looking for a Night's Queen. In the ancient legends of Westeros, the original Night's King, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, fell in love with a woman described as pale as ice, with eyes like blue stars. She was a White Walker, and together, they ruled the Wall for 13 years. They were eventually defeated, but the legend never said the Night's Queen was destroyed. What if she is still out there, imprisoned, waiting, and the Night King is marching south specifically to free her? Some versions of this theory place her beneath the crypts of Winterfell, which would explain why Winterfell was such a critical target. He was not just trying to kill the Starks. He was trying to retrieve someone. Other versions say he is not looking for the original queen at all. He is looking for a new one, someone living. Daenerys, Cersei, even Melisandre, all have been put forward as candidates by different theorists. And what makes this theory so compelling is what it does to the Night King as a character. It gives him the most deeply human motivation possible. Not power, not conquest, love, or whatever the White Walker equivalent of love turns out to be. Now he goes somewhere most casual fans have never even considered. The God's Eye. Deep in the heart of Westeros, there is an enormous lake. And sitting in the middle of that lake is a small island, the Isle of Faces, covered entirely in weirwood trees, the most sacred grove in the entire known world. This is almost certainly where the children of the forest and the first men made their original pact thousands of years ago. If the Weirwood network is like an internet, a system of roots connecting every tree across the continent, then the Isle of Faces is the server, the central node, the place where all of it originates. And the Night King may be marching directly toward it. Why would he want to reach the God's Eye? A few reasons. If he destroys the central node of the Weirwood network, Bran loses his connection entirely. The green site goes dark. The memory of the world goes with it. If any children of the forest remain alive, they would almost certainly be sheltering at the Isle of Faces. And the Night King may have deeply personal reasons to confront the beings who created him. And finally, destroying the heart of the Weirwood network would be the ultimate act of erasure. Not just killing people, destroying the very mechanism through which history is preserved. The show never went here, but the books might. And it remains one of the most intellectually satisfying in-game theories in the entire fandom. Let's come back to something the showrunners actually said on the record. They described their version of the Night King not as a complex villain with layered motivations, but as something closer to a force of nature, like death itself, given physical form and a clear direction. He was built to kill humans, and he is simply doing what he was built to do. There is something deeply unsettling about this interpretation, because it removes any possibility of negotiation, any chance of finding common ground, any hope of a solution that does not end in total war. You cannot reason with death. But here is the crack in that theory. The White Walkers have shown mercy. Samwell Tarly was allowed to walk away. A member of the Night's Watch was spared in the very first scene of the entire show. A machine built purely to kill does not spare lives. That requires a choice. That requires judgment. That requires something that looks a great deal like intention, which means the Night King is making decisions. He has preferences. He has a strategy that goes beyond simply killing everything in his path. And that means he wants something specific. We just do not know what it is yet. Here is what I think when I step back and look at all of this together. The Night King's motivation is almost certainly not one single thing. It is probably several of these theories layered on top of each other. A broken pact, visions of a coming hero he needs to stop, the desire to erase the memory of the world, something deeply personal connected to who he was before he was transformed. Because here is the thing we always forget. The Night King was a man once. Somewhere inside that ancient, terrifying creature, there was a human being. He had a life. He had people he cared about. And then he was taken, transformed without his consent, made into something he never chose to become. What would that do to a person? What would thousands of years of existing as a weapon, as someone else's tool, do to whatever is left of a human soul? Maybe the Night King does not want to rule. Maybe he does not want a queen. Maybe what he wants, more than power, more than revenge, more than anything we have put forward today, is for it all to simply be over. And the only way he knows how to end it is to end everything.